Yes, we're smiling. All right. Well, today, once again, we're re-recording because I can't get it right. But I guess that's part of the process, right? Don't people usually re-record what they need to? Anyway, whatever. Today we're going to tell another story about John Harvey Moore. And I do promise I've got other ancestors to tell stories about, but this is one of my favorite stories. I figured I'd share it next. So I hope you enjoy it. You enjoy it, right? Did you just roll your eyes at me?
No.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's on camera. I can go back and see if you did or didn't.
Okay.
Okay. This story is told by Vernon L. Moore, who was John Harvey's grandson, and is titled "Providence Takes a Hand to Assist the Saints." Now, remember, this does happen in the pioneer times, early days of Utah. That makes a lot of noise.
Sorry.
Okay. So the way they referenced people and things is a little bit different. So there's no... is there any ill will meant by you by making so much noise? I gotta have your popsicle, huh? Yeah, that is pretty icy. Goodness gracious, freeze or burn. Wow. Does it taste good? Okay.
Might also just be the candy corn that's just in my mouth.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Anyway, there's no ill intent or offense intended if the wording is a little bit different than the politically correct of nowadays. So, John Harvey Moore, my grandfather, resided at Holiday Springs, about a mile west of the present site of Spring Lake, after coming to Utah in 1852. About the middle of the following summer, he and his family moved into Payson to strengthen the number in the fort, as the Indians were getting surly with threats of violence. During the following year, Indian troubles continued to increase, and the people were warned to be on guard. Grandfather's wood supply was getting low, and the nearest source was about 10 to 12 miles up Payson Canyon. Usually 2 or more men went together so that they could have company, help protect one another, and especially to assist one another in lifting the logs on the wagons. Grandfather tried to find someone to go with him. Some men were too busy in the fields just then, and others were too busy with other work. Most of them were afraid of the Indians and warned Grandfather that it was too dangerous to go, as Chief Walker and his band had been seen a few days before in the nearby vicinity. However, no one knew exactly where they were. Grandfather's wood supply was fast diminishing, and he must have some wood before the end of the week. He finally arranged with a man on the east bench to go with him. They were to meet at the mouth of the canyon at 4 o'clock the next morning. It was the custom to leave early in the morning, drive to the location, and cut wood the rest of the day. The next morning they would load their wood on the wagons and return home. Grandfather left early and waited at the mouth of the canyon for nearly 2 hours, but his intended companion did not show up. As he would have to work alone, he drove his team faster than usual to give himself time to cut and load his wagon alone. Anyway, the team had a good rest for the 3-mile trip to the canyon. He arrived fairly early anyway and set to work cutting wood. He figured now there would be no danger, as he had seen no evidence of anyone in the canyon. About noon, he thought he heard a voice say to him, load on your wood and go home." He stopped, looked around, but could see no one. Being practical-minded, he thought that he must have imagined it and set to work again, as he had scarcely half a load of wood ready. He had been back at work only a short time after lunch when he heard the same command again. He stopped, wondered, then the urgency of getting the wood persisted in his mind. He still had an hour or two he could work and get home before dark. He then went to work more diligently than ever. As he got the next log trimmed and ready for loading, the voice came very urgently, the third time, "Load on your wood and go home." What could be so urgent at home, he thought. All was well in the morning when I left. Then, not questioning the command further, he harnessed his horses, hitched them to the wagon, and began loading wood. When a man works alone, he must lift one end of the log up on the wagon, then go to the other end and lift it on. To Grandfather's astonishment, when he lifted one end of the log, an unseen person lifted the other end onto the wagon. Every log was the same. He was quite panicky by the time the wood was loaded and bound with chains ready to travel. The more he tried to understand these strange happenings, the more astonished he became. About halfway home, the canyon widens out to form a flat about a quarter of a mile wide and about half a mile long, known as Walker's Flat. Although it was quite level, it was tremendously rocky. As he rounded a bend in the canyon and came out into the flat, he caught sight of the smoke of campfires in the lower part of the flat. Many thoughts flashed through his mind, although he could not seem to make any decisions. Thoughts such as, should I turn back? Could I turn back without being seen? If so, I would only be fenced in the upper part of the canyon. Maybe the Indians will be friendly. As he thus traveled on, he became aware of another unusual situation. He never had known his horses to walk so fast. Other thoughts flashed through his mind. Maybe his friend came after all and got in trouble. If the camp is Indians, I wonder if they will hear me. Hear me? Why, my wagon and horses' hoofs are scarcely making a noise on the road. How can that be? Just then he came in sight on the camp in a clearing near the road. It is Indians, and they are holding a war dance. If I am seen now, it will mean sure death. What can I do? What should I do? He could not seem to decide to do anything special, and the horses traveled on. He was so close now. The dance was growing in fury. All he could do now was to let the horses go and hope. He was now passing the Indian camp, and the dancing continued. He prayed that he could go another 100 yards, and he would enter the canyon again. As he went by, 2 small boys came and shot arrows at the back of the wagon. Will they tell the others? As he entered the canyon again, he could still hear their shouting, and the dance continued. He felt now he could breathe a little easier again. However, if his presence was told, they would immediately follow him. He whipped his horses into a fast trot and continued thus for miles, looking back ever so often and scanning the hilltops for signs of other Indians. Evidently thinking themselves alone in the canyon, the Indians had no scouts posted. As he hurried on, the events of the day began to make sense. The Indians were planning to attack. It evidently must be Payson, as it was by far the nearest town. When he pulled in at home, Grandmother came rushing out. She thought that he was ill or had met with some accident when she saw him home so soon. She wanted him to go in and rest as he looked so exhausted. Grandfather did not have time just yet to stop. He told Grandmother to unhitch the team and get everyone into the fort as the Indians were on the warpath. He grabbed another horse and rode out into the fields to warn the men to return home and prepare to fight the Indians. The men left their work and drove their stock into the fort, although some were hard to convince. When he returned with the men, a checkup showed that Alexander Keel was not there, but no one seemed to know where he was. They hurriedly loaded their guns, planned their strategy, posted sentries, and waited. About 10 minutes later, Indians were first sighted, one shadow, then another, skulking from tree to tree. The Indians had planned on attacking the community before the men came in from the fields and massacring the whole community. When their yells and arrows were answered with hot lead, many of the Indians fell. The rest stopped short and withdrew. The battle was short-lived. No one in the fort received even a scratch. The Indians went back toward the canyon, smarting from their defeat. How could anyone have known of their plans and warned the community? When the Indians left, many of the men followed them. Others were looking for Alexander Keel. They found Alexander slain about a half-mile southeast of the fort towards the canyon. Evidently, the Indians saw him returning home and, smarting from the defeat, expended their vengeance upon him. He was the first white man killed in what was known as the Walker War. He was slain in an area now occupied by Payson City Park. The Indians traveled then eastward over the bench towards Spanish Fork. The brethren feared they might attack other communities, so a posse was formed and they followed them. The Indians then took to the mountains and crossed eastward over Spanish Fork Mountain. The men picked up additional help and followed, but with little success after dark. Through the help of God, Grandfather was protected, and he was used as an instrument in God's hands to warn and save the people of Payson from torture and death. As he thought of the experience on Walker Flat, he wondered if his team and wagon were made invisible from the Indians. How else could he have got by unnoticed? Pretty good story, huh? What do you think? Share your thoughts with the world, all 32 people who might view this.
It's cool.
What are you, camera shy? It is cool. Does it build up your faith? How so?
Because it does.
Because it does. Do you know, when I was on the High Council, and I was in the second ward, I met two brothers who were relatives of, let's see, what was it? Alexander Keel. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? Their last name is Keel. And I had read this recently, and I was like, hey, I wonder if they're related. So I asked them. They're like, yeah, we're related to him. So, pretty interesting, huh? Do you think it's true? A true story? Do you think he really had like an angel on the other side of the log helping lift the logs onto the wagon? Or do you think he had his horses and wagon were made invisible, possibly? Do you think that could happen? Sure. Seems pretty improbable. But stranger things have happened, right? I believe it. I think it could happen. I think it did happen that way, as he related it. And sometimes those things do need to happen to save others, and sometimes God doesn't intervene. But this time he did. So, yeah. I've always enjoyed that story. Helps me to know that miracles can happen to simple people like me, because I'm nobody special.
You're scruffy.
What does that have to do with the story?
Mm.
Do I look like John Harvey Moore? He had a beard. Here. If you look up John Harvey Moore on Family Search, you can see a picture of him. I'm not going to edit the video to show that, just because, I don't know, I'm lazy. But yeah, he had one of those chin beards, just right here on his chin, this kind of sheep wool fluff.
Well,
I guess that was the in thing back then. Oh, look. All right. Well, should we call that good? I think that's a pretty good story. I hope that inspires others to look for stories like that. They don't have to be nearly as miraculous. Simple stories are good too. But
funny stories.
Yeah, funny stories. Let's have some funny stories too. Yeah. Should we try to do another funny story next time we post a video? Okay, we'll try. All right. Well, I think we bored them enough with their after story commentary. The wolf one?
Yeah. Just end it.
Which one?
Just they'll figure out next time.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll have him tell the wolf story, because
No.
I don't know what he's talking about. Well, have a good day, and keep working on those videos. Bye.